I want to tell you a little bit about Gloria. She's internationally acclaimed author, poet, and humanitarian. Now a professor at Cal Poly, Gloria received her PhD from Stanford University in Latin America and Chicano literatures. Dr. Velasquez is the author of 2 collections of poetry, and we have one of those collections for sale tonight, and the creator of the popular young adult series, the Roosevelt High School series. The first book of the series, Juanita Fights the School Board, and we have a couple of superintendents, former superintendents in our audience, was published in 1994, and the 9th book of the series, Tommy Stands Tall, was published last year. Some of the books have been published now in French and sold to French-speaking countries and people. There are a page of honors and acclamations for Gloria, and I'm going to just highlight a few of those. Her honors include an award from the Texas House of Representatives. Her song, Sun in Vietnam, appeared in the PBS documentary Soldados Chicanos in Vietnam. She was the first Chicano to be inducted in the University of Northern Colorado's Hall of Fame. And Stanford University now has the Gloria Velasquez papers archiving her life as a writer and a humanitarian. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Gloria L. Velasquez.
Thank you so very much. I'm so honored to be here. I want to begin by thanking Abby Adams for inviting me. It's an incredible honor to be here on Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day because during my lifetime pursuit of social justice, Dr. King and Cesar Chavez have been my greatest role models. And like Dr. King, and as I've entitled in the title of my talk, I dare to dream that I could create a better, more equal, humanistic society in everything that I do, whether it's teaching, whether it's writing a novel, writing a song. That was always my dream. Now, when I travel throughout the United States and abroad, I always like to tell audiences about my life story, and especially if there are young people in the audience, and I'm so pleased to see young people here, because I always tell young people, when you see me, see yourself. When you see me, know that you can make your dreams come true as I have done. I once stated in an interview that when you're born with nothing, you have everything. And it is this nothingness that has allowed me to be able to give back to society. I was born in the farm worker fields of northern Colorado, and I always say that my life is like a dream come true because of that. My parents were very poor and uneducated, despite the fact that they were born in the United States. I think my father dropped out of school in the 7th grade. My mother went 1 year, I think, to elementary school. Times were very difficult. We lived in farm worker shacks, 2-room shacks, no electricity, no running water, outhouses. I remember the outhouses clearly. I count my blessings every day now that I live in San Luis Obispo in a house with windows. I remember being a farm worker child, and even though we did go to school, we had to sit at the back of the bus because we were not literally segregated, but we were expected to sit in the back of the bus because we were the dirty little farm worker children. And all of those experiences that I had growing up made me feel invisible and disempowered. But I always told myself, I, Gloria Velasquez, will be somebody. I, Gloria Velasquez, refuse to stay poor and uneducated. And it wasn't difficult. My father was an alcoholic. He died very young. My only brother, Johnny, was killed in Vietnam. I'll be playing his song this evening. So times were very difficult, but I dared to dream. I dared to stay in school. And I'm glad that the young people are here because I'm going to read a poem tonight called Educate. Educate in English means get an education, be educated, because I tell young people education is knowledge and knowledge is power, and the only way we can change our communities and better ourselves is by getting an education. I would not be the humanitarian, the literary activist, the professor that I am today had it not been for an education. When I entered the University of Northern Colorado in the mid-1970s, it was much later after high school. I was already married and my daughter was born. And I entered the university and I immediately became empowered because I started reading about my culture and people appreciated my language. And there were several pivotal moments at the University of Northern Colorado that occurred. One of those is that in the mid-1970s, when I entered the university, I became directly involved with the Chicano civil rights movement. And that for me was very, very empowering because I think I'm perhaps the only professor at Cal Poly who has been directly involved in the Chicano civil rights movement. And so what I did is a very young, like my students that are here today at that age, I joined the Crusade for Justice, which was Corky Gonzalez was the leader of that faction of the Chicano civil rights movement in Colorado. We had different leaders throughout the Southwest. Here in California, Cesar Chavez and the organization, the UFW, but in Colorado we had Corky Gonzalez and we had the Crusade for Justice. So I joined the Crusade for Justice and I became actively engaged in protests and rallies, and that was, I think, a very pivotal moment in my social awareness. So, you know, I've been a social activist for such a long time. I call myself a literary activist now, but I think looking back, those pivotal moments in my life. Another pivotal moment when I entered the University of Northern Colorado was that I also joined the Chicano Arts Renaissance in the mid-1970s. Now, I know you're not, or maybe you're not literary, haven't taken Chicano literature courses, but Chicano literature in the mid-1970s was virtually unknown. You know, now we have anthologies, you know, Sandra Cisneros is well known, but we were virtually invisible in literature. And so what we did in the 1970s, and I was this young, naive Chicana, and I joined a group of socially committed artists, and we would gather throughout the country, and we would have our own poetry festivals, and we would read our poems, and we would paint murals. Luis Valdez would bring his theater, and we were actively engaging. And I like to compare the Chicano Arts Renaissance to the Harlem Renaissance, when you see that blossoming of literature. And that's what we were doing, and we didn't even know that we were creating literary history at that time. But that was another pivotal moment that, you know, had I not gone to the University of Northern Colorado, I would not have been involved with those two specific movements. And then, of course, in the 1980s and 1985, I arrived at Stanford University, and that was also another pivotal moment in my development as a literary activist, because I was able to take social issues that I cared about that affected my community, and I was able to put them in a global perspective. So I was interacting with women, for example, from Afghanistan, from India, from Iran, and so my Chicana feminist perspective became broadened as I was now making connections with women and their situations throughout the world. So those three moments were very important, and I like to emphasize to young people that education, for me, and I believe is the key to making your dreams come true.